this young man, who goes by the name Will. In his days, he worked at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, more commonly known as MIT. His job there was to clean the floors. One of the most prestigious and advanced technological colleges in the world. On that particular day, the mathematician Professor Gerard made the announcement to his class. Anyone who is able to solve the mathematical puzzles that are posted around the campus will be eligible for a unique reward. Even his name will be printed in the MIT yearbook when it is finished. Will answered the difficulties one day when he saw them, which amazed the professor, with the solution that Will had written down for the problems. And the following day, Professor Gerald arranged a meeting with a very cheery smile to find out which student had solved the problem. Unfortunately, out of all of the students, it seems that none of them has figured out the solution to the problem. In fact, Will is an exceptionally talented youngster. Reading books is one of his favorite ways to broaden his knowledge base. However, despite his obvious intelligence, he has little interest in utilizing it to achieve success, and would rather live a life of crime. His day consists of lounging around, stealing, and performing various menial tasks. One day, Will and his 3 other buddies get into a fight. When the police are trying to separate them, Will accidentally punches one of the officers. Will was finally put on trial as a result of the actions he had taken. And that trial is scheduled to take place the following Saturday. Will and his 3 close pals decided to visit a special club for Harvard students in the evening, in order to de-stress and relax. Chucky, one of Will's closest pals, lies to the female students at Harvard by saying that he studied history for his undergraduate degree. Chucky found it difficult to respond when someone suddenly appeared and questioned him about historical concerns associated with the economic war revolution. Thankfully, Will responded right away to all of these questions and cautioned the conceited man not to seem smart in front of women by claiming an idea in the book is his own concept. Will also answered all of the questions. It turns out that a woman named Skylar is the one who was attracted to Will because of his attitude and his intelligence. Even before she left, she had already provided Will with her contact information. When Will goes back to work the following day, he is once again found finishing a math problem that is posted on the wall. Will was startled to learn that Professor Gerald had witnessed his behavior firsthand, which caused him to flee the scene quickly. When the professor saw the answer that had been written by Will, he immediately started looking for Will by going to the building and ground office on his campus. Will had written the answer. Will was reportedly present in court yesterday for the hearing about his case, the professor learns. Will makes an attempt to defend himself in court, without the assistance of an attorney. Even the most observant Will could not forget anything that the judge had read. The professor is aware of the fact that Will is only a juvenile offender, who has a lengthy criminal history, and ultimately winds himself in jail. However, after witnessing Will's exceptional intelligence, the professor is willing to guarantee Will's freedom, so long as Will fulfills 2 requirements: he must assist the professor in solving mathematical problems, and participate in therapy. The work on the mathematical problems goes without a hitch. Will and the professor were able to complete the task in a very short amount of time, and even Will was able to find solutions to the most challenging mathematical issues, which had remained unsolved for nearly 2 years. Will's brilliance has the professor in even greater awe, and it has only increased his desire to see Will achieve his goals. Will, who was generally wild and mischievous but also a genius, humiliated his therapists when he first started going to therapy. Until the situation became so dire that the professor had no choice but to ask his college classmate for assistance. To be more specific, Dr. Sean has a background in medicine, and also teaches psychology at a university. Will was also mentioned by the professor, who compared him favorably to Ramanujan, because Will is gifted in the same way. A mathematician with Indian ancestry. However, the professor is baffled as to why Will does not wish to capitalize on his exceptional intelligence. As a result, the professor requires the assistance of someone who can communicate with Will, such as Dr. Sean. Will made a remark about Dr. Sean's painting the following day, when they saw him for the first time together with his genius. The artwork depicts Will. When Will says to Sean, "Perhaps you married the wrong person," Sean appears to be worried. In the painting, Sean appears to be scared because he is swayed by a problem, and when Will says it, Sean appears to be terrified.
Banging some other guy.
Following his observation of Will's demeanor, Dr. Sean is convinced that Will is keeping a significant secret from him. Will had constructed a wall that no one could break through. When Will arrived back at the hospital the following day, Dr. Sean immediately took him to a lake and instructed him to sit there. According to what Dr. Sean had to say, one could not just draw a conclusion about anything by reading a book or looking at a painting. Will might have been able to answer the question about love posed by Sean's doctor by referring to the love story book he had recently finished reading. But he is unable to experience what real love is like. Dr. Sean is confident that Will has never been in a romantic connection with anyone, despite the fact that Will was a child prodigy. Will had difficulty opening out to others and trusting them because he was too terrified to face his own fears and take action. After hearing what Dr. Sean Will had to say, he attempted to muster the bravery necessary to begin a romantic connection with Skylar. On that particular day, they each participated in joint activities. And the following day, when Will saw Dr. Sean once more, he remained silent until the end of their session together as a therapist. Will was intentionally put through this by Dr. Sean as part of his training to become more open. And sure enough, during the following gathering, Will began making an effort to talk about Skylar. Will finds this woman to be brilliant and ideal. However, she was paralyzed by the fear that Will might one day spoil her beautiful life. After that, Sean continued by saying that there is not a single person in this entire planet who is perfect. If they can each comprehend what the other is saying, then they will have achieved perfection. And Will would have never experienced that emotion if he had never made an effort. Will's heart started to soften as a result of Dr. Sean's comments once more. Will went straight to Skylar as soon as the meeting was ended and told her he was sorry for leaving without saying goodbye after their date the night before. Will tries to make things up to Skylar by taking her to see a dog racing show. There, Skylar inquired about Will's history, specifically pertaining to his family. Because Skylar has a strong desire to become acquainted with Will's family. Will, who has always been an orphan, has been forced to tell people that he has 12 elder brothers who now reside with him, which is a falsehood. Will, however, readily confesses that he is not yet prepared to present her to his family. Instead, Will introduces Skylar to the 3 people he considers to be his closest friends. Despite Will's efforts to communicate with Skylar about his health and his past, it appears that Will is unable to open up to her about these topics. Looking at the smile that is permanently plastered on Skylar's face will never get old. The following day, Sean's physician relays to Professor Gerald that Will is not yet emotionally prepared to move into the future. If Will has not discovered who he is yet, the professor's efforts to aid in Will's success will be for naught, regardless of how much effort the professor puts forth. It was demonstrated that, when the professor arranged for Will to have an interview with McNeil's company, Will instead gave the order for Chucky to take his place. What came as a surprise to these 3 individuals was the fact that Chucky's behavior was quite dissimilar to what the professor had described to him. And on another occasion, Skylar revealed to him that she would soon be relocating to the state of California in order to carry on with her education there. Skylar made the invitation to Will to accompany her. But instead of flying to California, Will becomes enraged and accuses Skylar of only playing with him in order to get a rise out of him. Even to the point where he makes a slip of the tongue and claims that he was an orphan whose adoptive father constantly abused him when he was a child. Despite the fact that Skylar invited Will on purpose, Skylar loved him very much and wanted to do everything she could to assist him in achieving his goals, but the persistent worry that follows Will around causes him to.
I won't be in your life.
I don't love you.
In addition, when Professor Gerald reprimanded Will for botching the interview he had scheduled with McNeil's company, Will was reminded by the professor that numerous respectable employment opportunities were waiting for him. Will was irritated, so he actually looked down on the professor, since he couldn't solve a math issue that Will considered to be very simple. This caused Will to look down on the professor. Will went back to see Sean, his psychiatrist, so that he could get some mental relief. In that passage, he bemoans the fact that everyone is rooting for Will to achieve success and land a respectable job. Will asserts that sweeping floors is also a respectable occupation in its own right. Will's only response to Dr. Sean's inquiry about his hopes and dreams for the future was a joke, so the doctor instantly dismissed him after hearing about his conversation with Sean. Will reveals to Chucky the following day that Skylar has abandoned him and gone to California. In addition to this, he grouses about the fact that everyone, including his own girlfriend, is rooting for Will to achieve success. Will now receives Chucky's counsel for the very first time. It turns out that throughout all of this time, Chucky wanted Will to take advantage of his strengths and not continue to live like him. He told Will that he should be grateful for the genius ability that not everyone can have, and he said that Will should be thankful for the fact that not everyone can have it. Even Chucky had the strong desire to get a taste of what it was like to have a friend who was always preoccupied with his profession. When Will heard this, he went back to Dr. Sean to repent for his actions. But while he was there, he overheard the argument that was taking place between the professor and Dr. Sean. They were bickering because Professor Gerald wanted Will to recover as soon as possible. Will is still suffering from the psychological effects of believing in other people, which prevents Dr. Sean from completing it. Because Will had been abandoned by the people who ought to have loved him the most, notably his parents, Will's relationship with them had become strained. Because of this, he avoids getting involved with people who are likely to abandon him, just like he did with Skylar. Will had such a strong awareness of his wrongdoing that he made an attempt to enter the room. After reviewing Will's long number of felony convictions and other criminal records, Dr. Sean tries to explain how he was mistreated as a youngster, where the narrative perfectly captures what Will experienced, thus making him.
Sean, not you. It's not your fault. I'm so sorry. Fuck them, okay?
Will couldn't get what Dr. Sean had said out of his mind during the course of the next few days. Up until one day, he was unwilling to take chances, but eventually he did so when he accepted a job offer from McNeil's company. In addition to that, he discussed his option with Sean's physician, which caused the physician to feel pretty pleased with Will's selection. However, in order to strengthen his argument, Dr. Sean inquired once more as to whether or not this was what the patient desired. And not long after Will had left, Professor Gerald approached him in order to express his appreciation for the assistance Will had received. In addition to that, he expressed regret for being overly ambitious in his approach to assisting Will. At last, Will was able to recognize his deepest motivations, thanks to Dr. Sean's teachings. In addition, he handed Dr. Sean a note, in which he stated that he would soon be traveling to California, to pick up both his girlfriend and his success.